What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel, a channel 100% dedicated to the Arsenal, who, as we all know, are by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. Now, we do have something we need to talk about, don't we? There's a lot of you that have already gotten this off your chests. I've ummed and ahed about doing a video on this subject, but I think we do have to talk about Kai Havertz. Racking my brain to try and remember a more divisive signing. Now, I know we signed him for a lot of money. He's our third largest transfer fee ever paid. I know we signed him from Chelsea, and we have a history of getting their cast-offs and pensioners. But something is not quite right about this. He has, after all, played 4 league games for us, and that seems rather soon for the amount of people that have already decided he's not going to make it. Now, I'm going to try and be fair and unbiased. I am rather sitting on a fence. So if you've chosen to watch this video because you want to watch yet another video going in on Kai Havertz and telling the world that he's not good enough and don't know what he's doing at the club, I'm going to probably disappoint you. Equally, if you wanted me to explain using graphs and charts and tactics maps how it is that this Raumdeuter position that you don't understand is going to be best thing that ever happened to our club, I don't think I'm qualified to do that either. And that's a key issue. I'm not qualified to tell you if Kai Havertz is a great player or not after 4 games. Thinking about all the players that we've signed that turned out to be spectacular duds. Franny Jeffers was a fox in a box. Arsene Wenger was sure this is exactly what we needed, the missing piece in a puzzle, someone who would operate in and around the box. It didn't work. Neither did Maran Chamakh, Gervinho. God, do you remember Igor Stepanov's apparently only signed as a prank played on Martin Keown that Wenger fell for? I don't know if that's entirely true, but the way he played, you couldn't disagree with the idea. Lucas Perez, remember him? 1 goal in 1 season, ended up... Listen, we've signed some duds, there's no question about that. But the thing that really strikes me here is when Shkodran Mustafi turned up, it's a player we needed. We needed a good centre-back. And, you know, he's a World Cup winner, so he can't be that bad. No one was sorry to see the back of him. I mean, it hasn't gone well for him even after he left. There have been some dud players. I mean, after all, we did just rip up Pepe's contract with 1 year left after spending a record 72 million on it. So it's not like... And look, of course that happens. This is investing in players' potential, hoping that they're going to fit the squad. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes it's Stefan Schillaci, and sometimes it's William Saliba. But in that period, usually it takes you more than 4 league games to work it out. I was thinking about this a lot, and I remembered for me, back in the day when we signed Dennis Bergkamp, I was thrilled. I absolutely loved Dennis Bergkamp, and I wasn't watching a lot of Italian football at the time, and I hadn't seen how badly it had gone from Inter, but there were reasons for that. And when he joined, of course, everybody was out waiting to say that we had signed a dud. Stuart Pearce wrote a piece in the newspaper saying that with us signing David Platt and Dennis Bergkamp was probably a mistake because he couldn't see those two bringing silverware. Can you imagine that? But it was 6 games that he'd played without scoring. 6 games, 3 draws, 3 wins. So not totally discomparable to what we're doing at the moment. The 7th game that Dennis Bergkamp played, scored a delightful goal against Southampton, and I don't think any of us ever looked back. There is something different about the modern sports fan. There is something, well, certainly the football fan. There is something about us where we demand to know why people are playing where they're playing. And the reality is, I can't tell you if he's going to be good or not because it's only been 4 games. My lack of experience means that I tend to wait and see. So I'm sitting on the fence. But obviously, it's not fair to compare. It wouldn't be fair to compare anyone with Dennis Bergkamp. Or Robert Pires, who's another player that stood out to me because in his first season, it was decidedly average. And I've been talking about that in relation to Fabio Vieira, who had a pretty underwhelming first season, but I still don't remember this many people claiming that we wasted our money. All right, so he's half as expensive as Kai Havertz. Maybe we overspent on Kai Havertz. There's a lot of overspending going on at the moment, by the way. We still spent less on Kai Havertz than Man United have done on Rasmus Højlund. And there is more reason to think that the player who scored the winning goal in the Champions League final is 3 years tested in the Premier League, even if you don't think he's been outstanding, is going to do better than Rasmus Højlund. I'm not sure other fans do this as much as us. I'm worried about Arsenal fans that lose their temper so quickly. I want to examine some of the things that have caused people to be upset by Kai Havertz. So first of all, what does he do? Well, he plays football. I'm not trying to be facetious, but he has been used across the front three at Chelsea. Arteta clearly feels that there is a midfield player in there and somebody who can exploit. We've all heard the phrase Raumdeuter by now, somebody who can occupy space, interchange with players ahead of him. But I think let's keep this as simple as possible, because I'm not trying to befuddle myself here. But let's say he's been brought in as a like-for-like replacement for Granit Xhaka. Where can he play? Well, like I said, he can play on the right. He's played up front. He has been playing for us in a variety of positions. In the Community Shield, he actually played as a false nine. But generally speaking, it looks like his position is going to be as a comparable kind of position to Martin Odegaard, perhaps on the left-hand side. And maybe they'll interchange. And maybe what Arteta's been going on about quite a lot, which is he wants to keep us unpredictable, is the reason that there isn't a definitive place for Kai Havertz. Then there's, how comes we have to change the entire system to accommodate him? Now, opinions are opinions. You're entitled to yours. I'm entitled to mine. And we're entitled to completely disagree with each other. And I'm entitled to think you're a buffoon. And I'm sure some of you think I'm mad as well. If you do, click like. It's the only way to shut me up. But one thing I'm sure I can prove is nonsense is the idea that the reason Thomas Partey was started at right back, or nominally started at right back, he barely played there, was because it was the only way to fit Kai Havertz in. Not the only way to fit Declan Rice in, but the only way to fit Kai Havertz in. And I think that we can all agree that must not be true, because in our last home game against Manchester United, which was a great finish, but didn't quite have what we wanted in terms of flowing football. But in that game, Gabriel started in his normal position, Ben White started in his normal position, and somehow there was still room for Kai Havertz. Now, obviously Kai Havertz's sloppy pass gave them a goal, or at least gave them possession in their own third, and then there was nothing anyone could have done about Rashford running all the way down the end of the pitch and scoring. I mean, maybe Ben White could have done something, maybe Saliba could have done something, but no, let's just all blame Kai Havertz. But I think this question of, why has he chopped everything around to fit Kai Havertz in is proven to be nonsense. If, in the Community Shield, Gabriel's playing and Kai Havertz is playing, you can't keep saying that Arteta's making all these changes just because he wants to fit Kai Havertz in. It's not that. Arteta's making all these changes because after realising that Timber is injured, he's going to have to try and find a way to invert from the right because he wants to be able to invert from both sides. And maybe you don't agree with that, and maybe you do. And let's talk about it in the comments. I'm doing a live stream tomorrow, Thursday, every Thursday at 9 o'clock. So you can join in and tell me what a buffoon I am there as well, if you like. But this idea that Arteta has completely transformed the team doesn't seem to make any sense. When we first signed Kai Havertz, I wasn't overly excited about it. I can't pretend I was. I was looking forward to getting the Declan Rice deal done, and that was still in the midst, but not quite done. So we were all a bit anxious. So to have Kai Havertz pop up for 65 million, also a lot of people were anxious about the fact that that might mean now we can't afford. Everyone's calmed down a little bit about that. So why are people so upset with Kai Havertz? Well, the question I would have on this is, what has he done so badly wrong? He's missed a sitter, for sure. And even Wright did that. Not very often. His pass was a little bit stupid, definitely. I remember Patrick Vieira doing that in the FA Cup semi-final where Giggs picked up the ball and went past everybody about twice before scoring quite a good goal. It's 4 games in. He hasn't been our worst player. Ramsdale's not played well for 4 games. Saliba hasn't played well in every game. In fact, Saliba got a bit of a roasting off the French press yesterday because they lost to Germany. A Germany with Kai Havertz in it. God, when your luck's out, your luck's out. He had a miserable game the game before that saw Hansi Flick, one of my favourite ever Bayern managers, sacked. And you do just have to feel for him. You know, when football is going against you, I mean, what a weird way to make a living. You know, you turn up, new club, huge fanfare, lots of money. Then what you do is scrutinised by millions of people who've never done it before. And within 360 minutes of you doing your job, everyone's already made their mind up. I haven't, and I'm sure you haven't either, as sensible people. Now, look, we want it to go well for him. It might just be that he's cursed. It might just be that Kai Havertz can do nothing right at the moment, just like Maguire or, you know, Jadon Sancho or the players that we seem to just discard, or Pepe for that matter. But I want to do something slightly different. I want to answer all these questions about, you know, where does he play, what does he do, what does he bring to the side, by comparing him not with, you know, Thomas Muller and other Raumdeuters, not with, you know, the best players who ever played, the Bergkamps and the Patrick Vieiras, but with the player that he is ostensibly replacing, Granit Xhaka. 30, nearly 31 years old. Kai Havertz is 24. Can Kai Havertz play in Granit Xhaka's position? I think it's worth casting our mind back, because Kai Havertz has come in to replace Granit Xhaka. But when Granit Xhaka came in, he was brought in to add steel and engine, determination. He was a defensive midfielder, a kind of box-to-box player. He was someone who's going to really have an impact alongside Coquelin and actually El Neni. Believe it or not, yeah, that's how long he's been here. I know a lot of you want to see him go. He's our link to Wenger. Anyway, he came without a huge amount of fanfare and frustratingly was signed because we didn't want to spend 10 million agent fees for N'Golo Kante. How different things could have been. I'm sure, I think I've heard Arsene Wenger talk about it. In fact, Arsene Wenger has talked about it. It is one of his big regrets that we didn't sign N'Golo Kante. And however much you fell in love with Xhaka before the end, come on. Like, Kante could have been an Arsenal player. Instead, we got Granit Xhaka. And honestly, even before he'd thrown the armband down in disgust at being booed for walking off or taking too long to walk off against Crystal Palace, I'd already sort of had enough. But not like after 4 games. You know, his first season, Granit Xhaka's first season wasn't terrible. You know, it was pretty good. His first 4 games weren't particularly spectacular. He came off the bench to replace El Neni for, I think, his first game. In that first season, he played... in that first season, he started 28 games, played a total of 32, 2 goals, 2 assists. Lots of touches. That's an Arsenal under Wenger, wasn't it? Lots of touches. Not so many big chances created, 3. Key passes per game, about 1.2. Interceptions 1.2, tackles 2.5, and won about 4.6 duels a game, mostly on the ground, very few aerially. So not terrible. A good utility defensive midfielder, someone with a bit of aggression. Obviously, in that first season, he got 2 red cards and 5 yellow cards. He got about 10 yellow cards every season, I think I'm right in saying. But his averages were about that. They weren't that different all the way through. He had a peak year, arguably under Unai Emery, and then of course, you know, the whole fan base wanted to see him go. So it was somebody that should never put a shirt on again, should never play for Arsenal again. And I think we gave him long enough, or we were forced to give him long enough when Arteta came in and decided he was going to stick with him. And I remember having lots of conversations. I couldn't understand how Wenger had always played him, because one thing you say about Granit Xhaka is he played games. You know, he played almost every game every season, but Arsene Wenger wanted to play him every match. Unai Emery had wanted to play him every match, and then along comes Mikel Arteta and he wants to play him every match. So I just resign myself to the fact that there's something they're seeing in training that I'm not seeing in the matches. But I was so sure he was leaving off that Crystal Palace game, and it took me a long time to come round again. But even then, you know, you look at it now and you say, but we did give him a chance. It did turn around. We like a redemption story, don't we? Can we expect or hope for the same thing from Kai Havertz? Can we all just chill a little bit? Kai Havertz, what does he do? Well, he wins more duels than Granit Xhaka ever did. He plays more key passes. He's our 3rd best passer of the ball if you looked at stats. And I know there's people out there saying, oh, stats don't tell you anything. Yeah, of course they don't. They tell you just facts, and facts are boring, aren't they? If Martinelli had put away the pass he gave him, we'd be sitting here talking about him as an assist. You know, we'd be sitting here talking about his assists. I think he will score goals. I certainly think he'll eclipse the average goals scored by Granit Xhaka, who for 3 seasons preceding last season's haul of 7, which was amazing, only scored a goal in every season. And never got over last season's 7 assists either, mostly around the 2 mark. Kai Havertz will certainly win more duels. He runs more than most Arsenal players. His key passes and his pass accuracy, as well as his tackling, which is phenomenal. His tackling so far this season in those first 4 games is well above the average achieved by Granit Xhaka. Maybe you just don't like the look of him. Maybe he doesn't fit what you like to see in a football player. I like Declan Rice. I think he's a giant player for us, and I think he's got a smile on his face and charisma. But isn't that what always happens? We go for the ones that look good. I don't care. Peter Beardsley, those of you old enough to remember him. Listen, let us all at least agree that however expert you are in picking players and knowing how good a player is, you're probably not up there with Arteta. And if you think you are, surely 4 games is not enough. Stop going on about the amount we spent on him as well, because there hasn't been a whip round. You didn't pay for it. The amount we spend on players has a lot to do with the current financial setup. And in terms of how we're doing at signing players, Ben White, Ramsdale, everybody said we'd overspent. Don't think that's true anymore. The 30-something million that we spent on Odegaard is starting to look like something of a bargain. We spent 6 million on Martinelli. Does this team deserve a little bit of credit in the bank? Can we just say Kai Havertz is going to get a run of games, and if he has a really bad first season, so did Robert Pires. So did Fabio Vieira, and people are giving him a chance now. People are clamouring for him to start instead of Kai Havertz. How fickle we are. I'm not. I cannot say that I was thrilled that Kai Havertz came in. I cannot say that I can already see him becoming a superstar, but I want to see more of him. And beyond all of that, it leaves a really sour taste in my mouth that we are going out of our way to criticise our players who play for our badge and who we are hoping will deliver our silverware. You cannot be a fan base that expects people to perform at their best if you're slagging them off once they've just arrived. Jurrien Timber hasn't had that kind of treatment, and we don't know. For all I know, Jurrien Timber could turn out to be a dud. He won't. Declan Rice, we had all these people saying you've overspent. Looks like a bargain at the moment. An absolute bargain. Anyway, that's my position on it. It's as simple as this. Whether you already know he's a superstar or you already convinced yourself he's a waste of money, can we all agree that the question hasn't been answered yet? He has only played 4 league games for us, and, well, it's been 3 wins and a draw. It hasn't been that bad. Anyway. I'm doing a live stream tomorrow. Feel free to pop in and tell me what an absolute numpty I am. But until I see you there, be lucky. Lots of love.
Vibe.
And now that we're filming,
Oh,
go for it.
people, now subscribe.